You know, if I could follow up with that, the National Assembly, their perspective, there are also lawyers who are saying that the Supreme Court has stated time and again that you cannot proceed against a non-jurist person. They think that the court process was faulty and that that can and will be challenged. And then the question of, what if another group comes up with another name? Because if you say you've prescribed this one, if the Southeast group are saying it doesn't address those issues, if groups keep coming up, does that help us in any way rather than dialogue with them?
No, it doesn't help, all right. But if you are saying that there's another group that comes up and produces a passport and prints currency and sets up an intelligence agency and a paramilitary organization of sorts, the law would go after them in the same way as they did the IPOB. As for dialogue, it's never been ruled out. I just said a short while ago that I believe that government is concerned that that IPOD had taken an opportunistic action by latching on to existing grievances in the Southeast, grievances that are legitimate, that need to be addressed, and that the government is making a separation between what IPOB is doing and there are real problems in the Southeast that need to be addressed. And I'm convinced that the government is determined to take some actions that would reassure, that would assuage, some of the feelings that are present in the region.
Well, ever since the operation in the Southeast, there are several people who are saying they don't know the whereabouts of the man in question. Does the government know his whereabouts?
I'm surprised that somebody would ask this question. Look, some people went to court and obtained his freedom. They signed his bail. I believe that a high-profile group, including a senator of the Federal Republic, signed in a court of law and obtained his freedom. So if you are looking for, why don't you ask the people who bailed him? I'm not saying that, I'm not aware, nobody has informed me that Mr. Kanu is in the hands of any institution of government. But if I was looking for him, I will ask the guy who bailed him, because that's the deal he has with the court of the land.
Do you see a situation where the National Assembly will have a run-in with the executive arm of government over this, considering the statements that have come out from the National Assembly meetings that we've seen so far? First of all, we heard the Senate President talk about how this process, the federal government, what the military did was unconstitutional. And then we heard much later that he was meeting with senators from the Southeast, and they've released statements that doesn't seem to, support the prescription of IPOB as a militant terrorist organization. They believe that it will have vast implications for people from that region.
No, I don't expect any such collusion, because from the initial statement by the President of the Senate and the subsequent one by the caucus of the Southeast senators, I think they essentially were concerned about the due process of the law being observed. And of course, it is on the basis that people had misread the initial pronouncement of the military as meaning a fait accompli had been put in place as far as IPOB is concerned. But you can see that, from then to now, the due process of the law have fully been complied with. The courts have ruled on the matter. I think that then there is no basis for disagreement.
What about the fears that this could have grave implications for people from the Southeast? Recall that even before now, before Boko Haram was designated a terrorist organization, there were also appeals for the federal government to, tread with caution, because it would have grave implications for those who come from that side of the country.
I think that those fears are absolutely correct, and people are entitled to those views, and that I think that the expectation must be that our military, the law enforcement agencies, must conduct themselves with the highest respect for human rights. Certainly, there must be no room for generalizations as far as assumptions as to membership or advocacy for IPOB is concerned. there has to be proof of evidence, for anybody to be so branded. I think that there is good reason to be concerned that an innocent person may be roughened up on the basis or on the wrong assumption that they are IPOB when they are not. So then the thing is to appeal to them, all of the security agencies, to exercise the highest level of caution and to make sure that the rights of citizens are respected.
What about internationally? What effect do you think this will have on, people from that region, people of the Southeast, internationally, when you prescribe a certain organization as a terrorist one?
I think that I don't think anybody is mistaken the fact that IPOB is a small group of misguided young people who are running against, I says, the wind, or running against the tide of politic and established views in the region. I think predominantly, everyone is convinced that the Southeast leadership, represented by their governors, their parliamentarians, and their political and their business people around them, they don't want this country broken. They want this country to be one. However, are there grievances that need to be addressed? Yes, there are grievances and they must be addressed. I think that it would be a mistake for anyone to simply be assumed to be a terrorist simply because he comes from. That will not be fair. In any case, we have had this experience also elsewhere. As you said a short while ago, with the Boko Haram and all of that. But even the international systems, I think they have a way of, being guided by the rights of individuals, and that they allow you to, project yourself, make the mistake before there's a clampdown on anybody.
Onyata has a question for you.
Mr. Sheil, the question I want to ask, let's step back a little bit and ask a question that, as regards, how do you deal with a situation where some people, these youths, majorly youths that have been following Mr. Kanu, believe that their concerns are legitimate? And yes, this group has been proscribed. What about other groups that might come up with legitimate issues? How do we deal with these issues? Is it by just clamping down on them? Or do we sit down to talk?
No, government this is not a dictatorship, certainly. So government will not clamp down on people because they have grievances. A major problem in the East and in many parts of the country, obviously, the issues of poverty and unemployment are critical a critical part of the solution to all of these things. My assumption is that there will be measures that will come that will be reassuring to not only youths in the Southeast, but all over the country. There are already processes that are being put in place. All of the things about the social investment and schemes that are being implemented by the federal government. It's a given commitment in our manifesto as a party, as APC, that will create jobs. Because, as they say, the idle mind is the devil's workshop. So therefore, Kanu himself achieved some traction, achieved the traction in the Southeast because he cashed in on the fears and concerns of ordinary people. And I think that government is in a position to make a separation between what is genuinely, matters of grievance that need to be addressed and matters that are terrorism related.
Question, and I want to bring in a follow-up to that, because some other groups have declared, for instance, Oduduwa Republic. There was that point where there was a threat to those living in the other parts of the country, in the northern part of the country, to leave the country by a certain time of the year. These are all issues, and there's likely to be some other ones coming up. So, yes, you said there's no clamping down, but what are the modalities to deal with issues like this? Because agitations will continue to arise until these kind of plans are put in place and people know that they can have an ear of they can have the ear of the government to settle these issues. What modalities are there?
Well, I don't think anybody is right to make assumptions of any country anywhere in the world that is not that doesn't have the undertone or overt expressions of agitations or concerns or problems. There will always be problems. The important thing is how are they dealt with, and for those who are promoting those points of view, those who are agitating, how far off the mark are they? If they are within the law, for instance, if you look at what is happening in the southeast, there is also MASOB, which is agitating for Biafra. But MASOB hasn't taken to violence. MASOB hasn't printed currency or formed an army or a pseudo-army. And so therefore there's a difference. That's why the government has not proscribed MASOB, because they have so far remained within the law of the land. And yes, you mentioned the Odudua Republic advocates and some of the northern elements who said who had given those notices. Important thing is that people had listened to counsel, they had listened to leadership, and they had toned down and they amended those ways. In the case of Kanu's IPOB, it's on record that they had shut themselves completely out of counsel from governors of the region. They snubbed the senators from their region. Who else is there do they want to talk to? They clearly are not interested in any form of dialogue with anyone.
Well, I believe that we have totally run out of time, Alhaji. We have to thank you most kindly for coming on Sunrise Daily. Mr. Garba Shehu is Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity.